discuss the president's executive order and other issues, let's bring in Senator Ben Cardin, the top Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee. And Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
It's good to be with you, Chris. Thanks.
You just heard top Trump advisor Stephen Miller on the travel ban. Your reaction?
Well, I find his comments very concerning. Look, we all want America to be safer. I can tell you that his executive order, if implemented, would make us less safe. It's not just my views. I've talked to leaders from around the world who tell us that it would be used as a recruitment for terrorist organizations, that it would put Americans at greater risk traveling abroad, that it adds to self-radicalization. Our concern about terrorism is real, but look at the numbers. The numbers of self-radicalization are much higher than people coming into our country. So we really need to have a smart policy, and we already have extreme vetting for refugees particularly.
Well, I want to pick up on this because you made similar remarks in a letter that you and 5 other Democratic senators wrote to Defense Secretary James Mattis this week, and I want to put what you said on the screen. This executive order provides ISIS and other enemies with a propaganda coup of unimaginable proportions. Honestly, do you really think that ISIS needs another tool to get people to kill us? They already hate us, Senator.
But they need a recruitment message. And I was talking to King Abdullah just last week, King of Jordan, and he said to us, look, we have 650,000 Syrian refugees in our country, and they're integrated into our country. They're not the security threat. The security threat is who can be recruited, how the Palestinians are recruited towards terrorism. ISIS is on the run. But if we give them a message, look, they're losing territory, the caliphate's shrinking, we're making progress. So their hope for their future is to recruit. And what America does on its immigration policy gives them a recruiting message.
But, Senator, the new Secretary of Homeland Security, General John Kelly, says that while the courts go through this long process of considering the president's order, it's, his words, entirely possible that someone will come into this country and do us harm. Here's an exchange he had this week in a congressional committee hearing.
But you don't have any proof at this point?
Not until the boom.
Not until what?
Not until they act and blow something up or go into a mall and kill people. So we won't know until then.
He's saying, the president is saying, Stephen Miller is saying, while the courts, while senators argue about, well, this fine-tuning of the executive order, we won't know until the boom.
Well, you don't know, but we do know one thing. We want to keep Americans safe. We want to do everything possible to do that. And there are risk factors. There's risk factors that this executive order could be used as a recruitment for someone here or self-radicalization, and that person may, in fact, go out and cause people to be harmed. These are, if you look at what we've seen as far as the terrorist threats in America, it's not the refugees. It's not the people that are coming in through our regular process. Have not been an unusually high threat to America. Do we want to do better where we can? Absolutely.
U.S. officials, I want to turn subject to you. U.S. officials now say that, contrary to previous denials, that the president's national security advisor, retired General Michael Flynn, did discuss U.S. sanctions with the Russian ambassador before he took office in December, at the very time that President Obama was imposing new sanctions because of Russia's role in interfering in the election. Here's an exchange that I had before the inauguration with Vice President Pence. Did Mike Flynn ever discuss lifting sanctions in any of those conversations? Do you know?
I talked to General Flynn yesterday, and the conversations that took place at that time were not in any way related to new U.S. sanctions against Russia or the expulsion of diplomats.
Despite that, the White House said yesterday that President Trump still has, quote, full confidence in Michael Flynn as his national security advisor. Question to you.
No, I think what General Flynn did with the vice president, misleading him or giving him wrong information, that's not the type of person you want to have around you giving you advice. So I think he has very much questioned his credibility. We need to get to the bottom of this, but it goes broader than just General Flynn. The relationship between Russia and our elections is something that needs to be independently investigated. I've called for an independent commission similar to what we had in 9/11. Russia attacked us. We need to have an independent investigation. And General Flynn's comments just add to our concern about the relationship with Russia.
Well, one of the reasons that all of this has come out is because apparently the FBI or the NSA, one of our intelligence agencies, doing what they should do, had electronic signal intelligence on any conversation the Russian ambassador was having. I'm sure they do it to our people in Moscow. So they knew what went on in this conversation. Should Congress, and you as the top Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, should there be an investigation of what exactly it is that Michael Flynn said? And I guess a larger question a lot of people are asking, what's wrong? In about a month, he was going to be the national security advisor. What's wrong with him at that point talking to the Russian ambassador about what the policy was on sanctions?
We have one president at a time. That president's conducting a major foreign policy initiative by imposing sanctions for Russia's attack on the United States. That message had to be clear. And if someone was trying to undermine that in a private conversation with the president Prime Minister President of Russia, that's wrong. And that's why a law was passed a couple hundred years ago to make that illegal. What our concern is, what is the relationship? Why did Russia do what it did in our elections? Russia is continuing to be active, not just in the United States, but in Western Europe in these elections. We got to get to the bottom of this as to what Russia is employing in order to try to bring down our democratic system of government. Yes, there should be investigations in Congress, and there's some that are starting and taking place, but there needs to be an independent investigation where people devote their full time to finding out what Russia was doing, why they did it, who was involved here in the United States, and making sure this never happens again.
Let's take a look at where we stand with the Trump cabinet at this point. And the statistics are interesting. So far, 7 of President Trump's cabinet nominees have been confirmed. At this same point in 2009, 12 members of the Obama cabinet were in place. And in 2001, Bush 43 had his entire 14-member cabinet confirmed. Senator, isn't this blatant Democratic obstruction?
Not at all. We can't stop these nominees. We know that. What we're trying to do.
No, but you're doing everything you can to slow it down.
But because these people have never been, many have never been appointed to positions before. They have vast personal background.
Some people would say that's a positive.
Well, let's find out about it. When you've had a person who's already been vetted for other offices, it's a lot easier for the confirmation process to move because you already have gone through that information. With a person like Betty DeVos, who we knew nothing about her commitment to public education, I think it was important that we took as much time as possible so the American people understood our concerns and we can hold her accountable now she's Secretary of Education. We're going to use our time to make sure that people understand the background of these individuals, their commitment to the agency that they are being appointed to, and so we can hold them accountable. And yes, in some cases, we would hope that Republicans may join us in questioning whether this person is the best person.
But Senator, back in 2013, when Republicans delayed the confirmation of 2 members of President Obama's second-term cabinet, here's what you had to say about that. This is a pattern of blocking President Obama's confirmation votes on his key cabinet positions. Senator, aren't you and other Democrats engaged in exactly the same practice that you criticized 4 years ago?
I think my recollection then was the Republicans controlled the Senate at that time, and we're not scheduling these votes. We don't control the agenda. The Republicans control the agenda.
Yeah, but you have ways of blocking it.
Well, no, all we can do is take our time. We can have the time for debate, the 30 hours that are given to us. We can't block when it's brought to the floor. We can't block when the votes take place. That the Republican leader decides. All we can do is use the time that's allotted to us to make our points, and that's what we're doing. We're not blocking these appointments. We scheduled the earliest possible days for hearings in our committees. I'm the ranking Democrat on Senate.
Yeah, but in some of the committees, then you boycotted so they couldn't have a vote. Let me, if I may, just bring up one last question, and that is the nomination of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. You say that he must be in the judicial mainstream. I understand he's clearly more conservative than you are, President Trump, a more conservative president than President Obama. Is there anything in his record that would indicate, just besides the fact that he's conservative, that he isn't in the judicial mainstream?
Well, I'm just starting to look at his background. I am concerned about whether he will represent individual constitutional rights or whether he's going to be more concerned about business constitutional rights. And we'll get into that.
Yeah, but that's a judicial mainstream issue.
Well, we're just getting into it. Give me a chance to meet with him. I have not met with him yet. Let me review the record. But, Chris, I want to tell you, this is in backdrop to Republican leadership in the Senate that denied President Obama for 10 months a vote on his nominee. We want to make sure we get a fair process, and many of us are concerned as to whether this Republican leadership will allow us to have a fair process in the United States Senate. And you're already, as you showed earlier in the show, we have a president who's shown a real disrespect for the judicial branch of government. We need to make sure we have an independent judiciary.
Senator Cardin, thank you. Thanks for coming in today. Always good to talk with you, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
Up next, we'll bring in our Sunday group to discuss what President Trump may do next to restrict people coming